Then let's start off with a nice meditation, shall we? So you know the drill. Breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, or in through your nose and out through your nose if you prefer. But hold that breath a bit when you inhale. And when you exhale, let your body just relax. Let yourself sink deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Paying attention to your breathing, but not thinking about your breathing. Just watching the breath go in and out as you go deeper and deeper. Deeper. And deeper. And there's a quiet place in which you are just floating quietly. Breathing gently, watching your breath. And allowing yourself to be free. And if you can imagine with me that when you breathe in, you're breathing in grace. And it goes first into your heart. And then goes through your bloodstream. Tiny, joyful smiles of grace going to every cell in your body. As you stay deeper and deeper and deeper. Breathing pure grace. And the color of the grace is white, pure white, clear white. Pure presence. One great master. So as that grace goes into every cell in your body, as pure white light, each cell of your body is a crystal. crystals throughout your body. 50 trillion of them, each one unique and different. And as you exhale, all of the lights and the colors from those crystal cells go out from you as love to bless the world in which you live. And it begins by filling the room where you sit. So your presence is filling the room. Up in each corner, from wall to wall, your presence. And as you exhale, all of the multiple colors from the crystals, from the pure prisms, beautiful prisms that are your cells, are cast out into this room so that it's dancing with color and light, which is you, spiritual you. A blessing to the world, a healing to the world. Your pure love going out with each breath. And now, can you think of people that you love, who you want to bring into this room? And bring them in now. There is no distance between us spiritually. All you need do is open the door of your heart and let them into this room where they can be bathed by the light of your love. And I'll be quiet now and allow you and your loved ones to share in this love. Those people that you love, and even the people that we don't know, if we can find out who they are and bring them to mind, they are right here with us. Anyone else you'd like to bring? And now I'm going to ask you to go back to those people who have moved to the other side, perhaps your parents and grandparents, perhaps friends or relatives, and bring them in too. They haven't died, they're still here. Bring them in and let them be a part of the dancing light of your love. Surrounded and protected and filled by your love. Now you know how to get to this place. You can come back here anytime you like. In 60 seconds, I'm going to ask you to come back to the group. When you do, bring this beautiful self with you. Welcome back. Does anyone have anything that you'd like to share about the meditation? Just put your hand up if you have anything. If not, we'll move on. Yes, Uta. Unmute yourself.
Screen. But since I'm here, I guess one of the things that comes up for me in reading the last chapter is the worthiness thing, obviously. And I find I can either be in a place of right here, right now at peace, or I move into the place of self-judgment for living in my comfort zone. And that keeps being activated. And it's like, I don't want to be living in my comfort zone and not fulfilling my purpose, but I also don't want to not be right here and right now and peaceful.
We'll talk about that. Thank you, Uta. So then nothing about the meditation. So talk to me about what happened to you regarding the chapter. Anyone?
Hello.
Hello.
Barbara here. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, it's Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
I've got
Nice
two
to see you.
wonderful, my grandson and a wonderful friend here with me tonight. So
Wonderful. Welcome,
yeah.
welcome.
yeah,
Welcome.
one of the first things that hit me with that book in that chapter was talking about perceptions and how we see things in such different ways, and the reality is quite different probably than what we are actually seeing. And in the 80s, I've written lots of poetry, but one poem came through and it just really stuck with me. It's very short, but it's called Perceptions. And it starts out like this. Losing it right now.
Take your time. Take your time.
The flowers, The colors are so true, beauteous blossoms of red, white, and blue. And yet I look again and the colors are not the same. Turquoise, yellow, and rose. What happens if I change my pose? I focus now, inside it's white. No colors, just iridescent light. Could the flower a trickster be? Or are the perceptions dependent on me?
Oh, wow. That's right. That's right on this chapter, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Congratulations. Good work, Kayla.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Anyone else before I forge ahead? Here I go forging. What I learned and what I think we all can learn from this chapter is that we have a menu before us. And we order from that menu. And we get exactly what we order. We have a menu before us. We order from that menu and we get exactly what we order. Now, where did the menu come from? You'll love this. We wrote the menu. We wrote the menu and we order from it and we get exactly that. As we order from the divine matrix, which is God, which is the universe, which is Holy Spirit, which is the great presence, which is the great mind, which is, go on and on and on. It doesn't make any difference. It is us, and we are it. So the divine matrix, as our dear teacher teaches us here, is a mirror. And what does that mean? How does the mirror work? We live our lives according to our thoughts and according to our emotions and according to our actions and according to our imaginations. And those are all expressions that are going out from us at all times. There's no such thing as a private thought. Did you know that? There's no such thing as a private thought. When you think a thought, it goes out into the universe and has an effect. Thoughts are real things. And if you believe the divine matrix as I do, then you'll know that thoughts are prayers. Your thoughts are prayers. So if I, because I have a little PTSD, if I allow myself to get into a place where I'm imagining a fight and I'm seeing what I'm doing in the fight, and then it becomes more heated and I can let my imagination run away with me. And then I say, Bob, stop it, stop, just stop. All is good, all is God, all is love. Stop it. Because those thoughts, those scenarios that I'm imagining in your brain, in my brain, and incidentally, I think you probably can relate to what I'm saying. The little imaginary stories that go on in your brain. And sometimes they're tragedies. Those are real. You're writing a story and sending it out into the universe. Sending it out to the divine matrix. What the divine matrix does is it takes it and converts it around and mirrors it right back to you as reality. And the messages that come back to us, as we read in this book, are sometimes subtle. Like Gregg's mom, her dog with cancer spots in its lungs. And Gregg said, Mom, you need to go get checked because your dog has cancer spots in his lungs. And we know that this subtle reflection back to us from the things and the people that we love, we need to pay attention. And she paid attention and she went and had a checkup and they found a little scar tissue in her lung and it had become cancerous, and they went in and lopped off the lower third of her lung, and she's completely cancer-free and living a happy life. Have you ever had, and this is a discussion, this isn't just a lecture, so you need to step up. Have you ever had in your life a subtle message like that you can think of, that you had to pay attention to? Take a minute and think about that. You sent a message out, either voluntarily or involuntarily, to the divine matrix, and it came back to you. Because you're not alone here. We're not alone, not any of us. We send messages to the matrix via our emotions and our beliefs, and it replies by creating a reality that resonates with those beliefs. Let me repeat that. We send messages to the matrix, to God, to Holy Spirit, to the great presence, to Great Spirit, to the conscious universe. I don't care what we call it. It's made of energy, and the name of the energy is love. And it's all powerful, all creative energy and force and being. We send messages to that because we're free. We're free. We can do whatever we want. A squirrel doesn't send messages. We send messages because we're the creators. We're the ones that can create from our imaginations. So we send messages to the matrix via our emotions and our beliefs. And so you might want to just ask yourself, what's going on in my life right now that I don't really like? And what's my belief around that? Because it's just a resonance of that belief coming back. Boy, it's hard to change that sometimes. Man, it's hard to change that because we spend our whole lives being indoctrinated by the parents and coaches and teachers and governments and churches and schools and friends and relatives. You know, we're indoctrinated with all these beliefs. It's hard sometimes to say, I don't want this thing that's happening to me. I have nothing to do. I didn't create it. I have no idea where it came from. I did not create it. And I'm not saying, boy, there's no blame here. Wait a minute, there's no blame here. Like I have a very dear friend now that's in his last stages of life with cancer. And I would not say he created his cancer. No, absolutely not. What I'm saying is that we live our life in a certain way. And the way that we see ourselves, the way that we identify ourselves, our self-worth, our worthiness, all those things, this way we see ourselves as we go through our day. That is a message. That is a living message to the matrix. And it replies by creating for us a reality that exactly resonates with those beliefs. This was an interesting chapter, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I felt that it was really an interesting chapter is because it's two chapters in one. Like what we're talking about now is the resonance of the beliefs and how the divine matrix creates as a mirror, and we're talking about all that. And then they came to a screeching halt partway through the chapter, and he started talking about fear. And it was a really abrupt change for me. It was a different chapter. And I tell you that the second part of that chapter, that one in which he talked about fears, was one of the best chapters I've ever read. One of the most important chapters I've ever read. I have the book here. Let me just see, put on my cheaters. I want to just go to page 153 and name because he was talking about that he has these people in class, and he says, when you were children, you were all taught things and you learned who you were. And you know that's true. I mean, there's not a one of you listening here tonight that doesn't know that that's true, that you gained almost all of your self-identity by the time you were 6 years old. But up until you were 6 years old, you were an absolute genius. And then you started learning that it isn't that easy, and that you're not that perfect, and you're not that good, and you're not that fine, and you're not that pure. You started learning all of that, and all of that started happening. And if you look back on your life, and back in those early days, and what he did is he said to everybody in the class, I'd like for you to just write down a description of the caregivers, whoever they were, your parents, your teachers, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, whoever the caregivers were. What were the negative things that happened from them? And he got this list. But they all yelled out. Remember, he said that they were all yelling out, even the timid people in the class were yelling out answers. They were all unloading. And after a while, because they were all cathartic with all of these words, they all started laughing. It was a sense of real joy, because for one thing, they found that they were yelling the same words. And the most common words he wrote down for us here: angry, judgmental, controlling, cold, abusive, invisible, unavailable, jealous, fearful, critical, strict, and dishonest. If you can relate to any of those, then those are the things, those are the negative things that accompanied your earliest upbringing, your earliest times. And I'd like to just stop now, and I'd like for you to just stop being a spectator in this class and start being a participant. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about some of those negative things that happened in your life, whether it was anger or resentment or jealousy or in being invisible or unavailable or whatever it is. We need to share with each other. We need to come together here and join with each other. This is not a television show. And incidentally, if you don't put your hand up, then I'll just call on you, because that's easy too. Everybody here had a perfect childhood. God, that's great. Nobody here had any negatives. Wow. I wish I'd grown up in your house. That would have been great. Laurie, how about you? Unmute yourself, dear, and jump in here. There you are.
Yeah, like everybody else, I just had a perfect childhood. I can relate to every word on here. I was brought up in a military home, and my dad treated us like we were little privates. When he said jump, you said how high, sir? And he's very abusive. And yeah, but you know, my sister used to roll on the floor fighting with him, and I was the one that wanted to be invisible, and I still have that, where I would just rather be invisible. I like to watch and listen, but just pretend I'm not here, sort of thing. And it's something I want to work on. I'm just in the process of doing a step 4 in a 12-step program. And in the 4th step, you know, you do your complaints or whatever. And on this new step 4, then you turn it around and you look at the people's assets. So I'm seeing my dad totally different. I'm seeing his good part, not just his bad part. And yeah, he was wonderful in a lot of ways. So I'm finding I'm able to let go a lot of that resentment and almost confusion, like why. I mean, my kids probably wonder why I treated them the way I treated them sometimes. And, you know, I think it's just generational. And at some point, we just have to change that script. But life is certainly interesting. Yeah, I really love this book. I really like this chapter. And I really like this one on our fear and separation and abandonment issues and that, low self-worth. Yeah. And I think that pretty much affects all of us. And I think as we get older, we accept ourselves a little bit more and life on life's terms. But I think it's just a big learning process, and we have to go through a lot of this stuff, and it helps build our character. And if we didn't go through that, we wouldn't be this way, which is probably, if we look at it, it's probably a strength. Some of our character defects. Yeah, no, I just find this book really, really interesting.
Lori, do you think that in your own life that your beliefs have been a message to the divine matrix, and that the reality that's come back to you has been a reflection of those beliefs?
Yes, absolutely.
Like being invisible, for instance.
How would you think that? In like, what do you mean?
So, I mean, if in your belief system, you're only safe when you're invisible, and that when you're in a position that's in a situation that's at all awkward, you kind of disappear. That then when situations come along that are could really be beneficial to you, are you also disappearing?
I tend to be passive aggressive, which is not very good sometimes. It depends how I'm feeling at the time. Lately, I have been just wanting to be invisible, and but other times I'm not, and I haven't quite put my finger on what it is that triggers that, whether I am or whether I'm not.
Could it be, and I'm not telling you, I'm just asking, could it be the trigger could be fear?
Yes, and I think it's fear of acceptance. Yeah, because I was with a new group of people recently, and they were just wonderful, and I fit right in. I felt good. I didn't feel like I was being judged, or I just felt totally accepted. And then when I was with my friends recently, there's been a little bit of clickiness there, and I'm not part of that clique, and that bothered me. And so I didn't feel like I was being accepted, and that I felt like I didn't fit anymore or something. So yeah, I think a lot has to do with feeling accepted or not. And that's probably all in my own mind too.
Well, it may be all in your own mind, but nevertheless, it's real, whether it comes from your mind or wherever. If there's a message inside of you that says, I don't think I belong here. Mm-hmm. Does that sound real to you? I don't think I belong here.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you shut down and go away.
I shut down and just want to be invisible. and I'll walk behind the group or whatever, and for me.
Well, I don't want you to put yourself down for that, because that's a very natural thing. All of us are wounded. We're all wounded. We need to be gentle with ourselves and not be putting ourselves down because we're sad, or because we're hurting, or because we have to isolate or go away or be alone because we don't feel like we belong, because those are very real things that cause us, that we are wounded. And in order to heal, the first thing we need to do is accept that we are wounded. I think almost all of us, almost all of us human beings, and maybe all of us human beings, but almost all of us are brain damaged. And what I mean by that is that we have been taught things in our mind and in our brain that don't serve us, and in fact twist us away from the reality of who we are. That's what this class and all these classes are about, really.
My friend, when I was talking to her, she said, Lori, remember, whatever you're thinking is probably wrong, because my mind can take off on me and take me to awful, awful places, make me feel even worse. So I printed that out and put it on my fridge. It's right across from where I sit. And I'm sitting there and my mind goes and I look up and I see that sign and I have to laugh. And I stop the negative thinking right away. So that's working for me lately.
Have you got room for another little sign under that?
Sure.
All is good, all is God, all is love.
Okay, I did put something like that on my computer, a little thing. Actually, I put, I am loved, I am blessed, I am safe, and I'm free.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And I see that on my computer every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've
Because
been-
that stuff works. It goes into your head.
Thank you for sharing. You've been good for us tonight, and I appreciate it. I really
no
appreciate it.
Thanks for asking me to share.
When we're talking about universal fears, that the fears run our lives. Run is spelled R-U-N. We could put an I in there. Our fears ruin our lives. But they don't have to, you see, because fear is not by itself a negative or damaging thing. Fear is just energy. That's all it is. It's energy. But the meaning that we put on the fear is what causes us the problem. If we put a meaning on it that is directed toward us, then we become angry with ourselves, or disgusted, or disappointed, or go into self-loathing. And talking about abandonment and separation, if you have your book in front of you, you can read along with me if you like, but I'm going to read from page 154 and 155. Some really
Bob,
things.
Bob,
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know that Nancy has raised her hand.
Oh, let's call on Nancy then.
Oh, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Wait,
okay?
wait till they show your face.
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks for inviting me to your meeting. And I just love this book. It's written in such an easy manner, easy way of understanding. It's like putting it into English from a whole different language. And I really appreciate that. And I was gifted the book by Kayla a couple of days ago and have just read not the whole book, but just that one chapter that we're dealing with tonight. And it's just amazing, those words that came up. I'm 70 years old and I'm the youngest of 11 children. Now there's only 4 of us left. And, it's interesting because I'd always thought that, I love my dad. He was very strict. He was the caregiver that I remember the most. But whatever he taught me, I believed. Like he said, and why is the sky blue? And I'd say, because you said so, Daddy. He says, that's right. So, that's the way he would teach us, and so when my sisters and brothers were saying all negative things about him, I'm thinking, I don't remember any negative things. But when all these words came up in that chapter, he is all of those words. And interestingly enough, I just divorced my second husband, and he was all of those words big time. And I'm so glad that I got rid of that. But in my dad's issues, I guess I must have forgiven him along the way, because I loved him and I still love him. I still don't really see anything negative. Maybe I have let it all go. But maybe it mirrored back at me to marry this other man who reflected all those images. And finally, I stood up to myself and said, I don't need that. What do you think?
So that that standard in your life of how men are went out to the matrix and sent you the man you married, angry, you know, on the whole 9 yards. But you know, it's very interesting because you're not angry with your father and you still love your father, and that's so healthy. That's so beautiful, because those things that I read, those things that the classes all said, the anger and all of those things, those people that were our teachers, they learned those when they were 6 years old and 5 years old. They all learned those. This is called multi-generational dysfunction. And somewhere along the line, someone has to break that. I was doing a seminar in China, and there was a woman who she had metastasized cancer, and her doctors had said that she had a month maybe at the most to live. And she came to my seminar, and when I was talking to her, I wanted to know what was going on with her relative to her cancer. And I found out that her husband was pretty brutal, and he smacked her around a lot. And he was the boss, and she had no mind, and she had no position. And so I said to her, "Is that right?" And she said, "Well, this is China. This is the way it's been for 5,000 years." And I said, "Yeah, but is it right?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Your daughter is in this class. If she came to you with a black eye and said, 'My husband hit me,' what would you do?" She said, "Well, I guess I feel like she earned it." And I said, "Is it possible that after 5,000 years of women being second-class citizens, not much higher than the family dog, that you could in fact step up and break the chain of this so that the women in the future would be able to stand tall and look their men in the eye and say, 'Don't try it, buddy'? Is that possible that you could do that?" Well, she and I worked more during that seminar, and this is just kind of an aside, but when I went back to Taiwan, no, it wasn't Taiwan, back to China, to that place to do a seminar a month later, about a month later, they had printed out newspaper and had it up on the walls that this woman had gone to this seminar and cured her cancer. She was cancer free after that seminar. And now I don't say that in any way taking credit for her not having cancer. She did it herself. She just decided that she was worth living, and that she just changed her mind and changed her nature. But I love the fact that you could see that in your father and still love him and still not see him as a bad guy. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're over here on page 144 or 134, and we are in the second paragraph. Why would we expect to feel any differently? In the presence of science, that can place a human on the moon and translate our genetic code, we still don't really know who we are. And we certainly don't know for sure how we got here. We sense our spiritual nature from within while we look to validate our feelings, and I'm going to add this word, from without. From literature and cinema to music and culture, we make a distinction between our places here on earth and the distant heaven that's somewhere else. In the West, we affirm our separation from our Creator through the translation of the great prayer from which the Bible that describes this relationship, the Lord's Prayer. For example, the common Western translation begins, "Our Father who art in heaven." Acknowledging this separation in this interpretation, we're here while God is somewhere else, far away. The original Aramaic text, however, offers a different view of our relationship with our Heavenly Father. A translation of the same phrase begins, and this is translated from the Aramaic, "Radiant One, you shine within us, outside us, and even darkness shines when we remember," reinforcing the idea that the Creator isn't separate in distance. Rather, the creative force of our Father, whatever the meaning of that is we may give it, if not, is not only with us, it's in us. It is us, whatever that meaning we give it. It's not only with us, it is us and permeates all that we know of our world. The 2004 discovery of God code and the message that comes from translating the DNA of all life into the letters of ancient Hebrew and Arabic alphabets seems to support this translation when we follow the clues left to us in the first century mystical book, the Sefer Yetzirah. Did I say that right? Yes, I did. I think I did. We find that every one of the elements that compose our DNA responds to a letter in those alphabets. When we make our substitutions, we discover that the first layer of DNA in our bodies does, in fact, seem to support the ancient admonition that a great intelligence resides everywhere, including within us. Human DNA literally reads, God eternal within the body. So this tonight might be one of our most important lessons. We learned about abandonment and separation. We learned that every one of us has felt abandoned. And if you haven't felt abandoned, then you fear abandonment, and that fear drives you. But you can't be abandoned because we're all one. We're all apples hanging on the same tree. You have a different branch in your family branch, but it goes back to the same trunk that my branch goes back to. And we're all related. And the fear of not being worthy, the fear of low self-worth, the fear that you don't belong here. You were taught at a very young age that you were not worthy, and that became your identity. When I was a boy, I was shopped out to all kinds of different families. And what I learned at each family is that I didn't belong there. Hey, you're doing those dishes. Don't break them. Those aren't your dishes. This isn't your house. Be careful with those. Those aren't your dishes. Look at this mess in here. This isn't your house. You can't make a mess like that in this house. This is not your home. So I got that everywhere I went. And so I learned that I didn't belong and that I wasn't worthy. And trust and surrender, if you create situations where you'll eventually be shunned and abandoned, it may well be that you didn't see yourself worthy of anything greater. If you were shunned and abandoned, it may well be that you didn't and don't see yourself worthy of anything greater. Then, when the hammer dropped, you felt abandoned and you knew that you couldn't trust the future. You knew that you couldn't trust the future. So we're going to do breakout rooms. You've been pretty quiet tonight, but I want you to not be quiet in this breakout room. I want you to talk about how this chapter and tonight's class changes your life. The things in this chapter, I can tell you when I first read this book, things in this chapter changed my life. And I want to know how the things in this chapter and tonight's class are changing your life. So that's your breakout question. How will this chapter and tonight's class change my life?
How
You'll have
long do you want the?
20
breakout
minutes.
room?
You'll
How
have 20
long?
minutes.
20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to do that right now, and I'll put the question up as well so that people have that.
Make sure everyone gets a chance to share.
Yes.
And please go deep. Please really talk. That's the way we grow. We grow by expressing our deepest selves.
Okay, I just want to put the question up for people before we go into breakout. I'm going to just share the screen. And here we go. Share the screen. Here's the question. Everybody's got it? Good. And you will
Thank
now
you,
go.
Janet.
You will now go into your breakout rooms.